Now that you watched that workshop, let's hop into looking at some sample schedules so that you can get an idea of how to plan your day. I know that I need to look at things visually in order to be able to plan them. And I really do feel like schedules and lesson plans are a bit like chemistry. You have to have the right mix. You have to be sure you're combining the right things, because otherwise it just stays pure fiction in our mind instead of reasonable expectations. So what I've done is I have created this planning timeline. I want you to see the timeline of how to plan. Now, this first year or second year, it seems like it takes a lot of energy to get up and get going. It's a lot of heave ho, if you will. But after that, and when you understand the process, it does come easier. But I want you to see the formula. When you see the formula, you can make this adjust to your circumstances and to how you plan. So we're going to start right here with this beginning on the realistic view of how your unique schedule emerged, and then we're going to just work our way down through this timeline. So let's hop into it. You'll be able to look at each of these parts in depth as I consider them on each step here. So first, I want to go back over with you how a lot of us are either schedule or routine families. And then too, remember, I explained that I use a lot of routines in my schedule. Sometimes you can say you're both, but sometimes I think for the beginning, for your first or second year, it's easier to realize that you are dominantly one or the other type of family. So for a schedule, you have a more predictable start and stop. And this doesn't necessarily mean for a schedule person here that you don't have any young kids or you didn't have a newborn, because I was able to follow a schedule when my kids were younger because they did all get up earlier, and they were up usually by 5 or 6, and then a couple of them would go down to sleep about 10 o'clock. So I used that time to do school. But then it changed again when they give up their nap time. You know what I'm talking about. And then I switched to more of a routine when I didn't have any control over it, because then my younger kids were setting the schedule for the day. So I just want you to understand the two types of families here, and I'm going to explain how to schedule both of these into your day. Okay, so let's move on then to this next point, that I explained how to plan a school year here. It's like a puzzle. When you understand this math, then it allows you flexibility in planning, because you may have this whole list of subjects that you want your children to get to for the year, but you're thinking, how do I get this done? And when you understand the math, it gives you more flexibility. But because I want you to have a start point to get sailing and to get going, this is the main point that I want you to take away. School years, there's usually about 180 lesson plans or school days. That's for a 9-month school year. Now, if you're going to school year round, you see, obviously, you have some wiggle room. But I want you to understand this is your start point here with 180 school days. Okay, so then this next part we're going to get into is something that I just mentioned to you, but I haven't shown you quite how to do it. And this is the next step. After we create the schedule, the rhythm, understand what type of person you are, a schedule is quickly emerging, but we need to mix it. Like I said, it's a little bit of chemistry. Now, with the schedule, mix it with the curriculum that we have chosen. If you have not chosen curriculum, it's okay, because you still want to do this step. And hear my heart when I say a lot of homeschoolers do not do this. They pick up a curriculum and they go without doing the math. And you simply have to have a formula. You have to know what you are doing. And I chose these specific ones here in the picture because I'm going to explain why in the next slide. But what I want you to understand is that you're going to pull all your curriculum out. I even have the form here that I've made for you. I used to just do this on a notebook, but I've created a form for you. You're going to look over every piece to find out how much is the suggested time, how many lesson plans do they have. Right here, and the next formula, I snipped, or in this next page rather, I snipped part of the sample here so you could see the two side by side. This was the bottom part and this is the top part, because I want you to see my notes. And I went ahead and typed them out. A lot of this I would just do handwritten in my planner. This would be the name of the curriculum. This is how many times a week it's suggesting that you do it. You notice there's not more than 5 days because most curriculum is built off a 5-day week. 5-day weeks is how public school views a week, not 7 days. So just remember that, okay? So the reason I chose this American Frontier book that was back on this page right here, this American Frontier book, is I wanted to show you something a little bit harder to figure out because it was a book we wanted to cover. It's easy to jot down here how many lesson plans and days and weeks when the publishing company gives it to you. But when they don't and you want to do something, I showed you how I figured it here. After I weeded out the pages or discarded the pages that we weren't interested in, I came up with 240 pages. Now, look here how I planned. Do you see I divided that by 2 6-week terms? I don't want to do this the whole year. I don't know if this is going to be a good fit for us. I don't know if my son is going to like this book. I think he is. I looked it over. It's a beautiful book. It has a lot about the Western frontier he needs to learn about. It has a lot of reading, a lot of pictures. It just really looks like something engaging, and it's a time period that I want my son to learn about, and it's a book that we enjoyed. So we ended up staying longer on it, but I want you to show you what I initially planned. And I just took 2 of the 6-week terms, and I planned 5 days, which is 12 weeks, and then I got the 60 school days. Then I divided the 60 school days by the number of pages in the book. To give me a rule of thumb, here's 4 pages a day. Okay, so 4 pages is really a 2-page spread, right and left, right? Are you with me? So it's just 2 pages. But look how many times we're going to do it. We're going to do this every day because I am including not just history, but his writing, vocabulary words, some art. He wants to learn about the cowboys of the time, the weapons of the time. So we're going to include art in it. Now, I color-coded my children here because I didn't want you getting confused with which one this was for, and also because I wanted you to see that this standalone book is going to cover quite a few of the subjects that I need. All I really have to add for him for this 2 6-week terms is math, and we're really good to go. That's it. It's not any harder than that. It's something that I knew this one child was interested in. I need to engage him because he was getting the humdrums, and I took this book and I used it, and I wanted to show you how I did the math. And I used this example like I explained earlier because it's harder. It's easy for you to find one that tells you that it has 180 lesson plans and do it 5 days, 5 days a week. So I want to arm you to step out of the box and to use resources that you have. Okay, now let me move on to this next child, number 3. Here's 2 parts that I'm using for him. I happen to use Jump into Writing. It's a composition, but see, I made my note to myself that it's a 2-year program, and they suggested 45 minutes each class. Now, they suggested every day, but you see here, I put that I was going to do it 3 times a week because over here, he needs to cover some geography. This was a really fun geography book. It's very conversational style. It's his style, but there are 44 lesson plans in it. I said we're going to do that the other 2 days of the week because I want the emphasis on writing vocabulary to be taken from his geography. I knew that he was having a hard time with writing, and even though he needed to do it, I cut it back to get something that he really enjoyed and that he really needed to get as well that year. So I did this 3 times a week, and we did this 2 times a week. This gives me my overview for the year for each child. And then look here at my high school kid. We used medieval high school history. They said to do one lesson per week or for the 5 days. It has 35 lessons, right? So that's almost it is a whole school year, which is 36 weeks. See, I gave you the math, so this way you know how to be flexible and change things around when you need them, and you don't think, okay, I have to do this one subject all 180 lesson planning days. But look what it covered for actually he was a junior at this time. This kid was a junior. And it was literature, composition, analysis, and history. I have him covering that 5 times a week. Do you see how many subjects I got into this one, and it's only 5 times a week? Now, when I say 5 times a week, he really can cover it an hour or more. So you want to give this one a little longer than an hour because of how many subjects he's combining together. And he absolutely loved history at this age, so there was no rush. But do you see how we could also get in foreign language? He could get his math, and we could get other electives in. So again, covering 2 or 3 subjects at one time, but looking over the resources that you have, then you see this emerges about how many times a week you're supposed to cover subjects. It really is a nifty way to organize your curriculum. And a lot of homeschoolers, even seasoned veterans, don't do this. They just pick something up, they add it to the mix, and wonder why in the world their kids are now overwhelmed. So take the time to look in the beginning at exactly how much you're supposed to be covering. Okay, don't let me lose you. Let's go on now to this next point, because now I want to explain a little bit about what is block scheduling, looping, or even just your schedule. So you understand that my background is not a public school teacher. Okay, so I don't bring the public school's way of doing things into my school unless it works for me. Okay, so what is block scheduling? Well, it's kind of overtaken public school, and a lot of times it's used for the upper grades for high school. The thought is that there's less subjects. They only have like 4 periods or 4 classes instead of 8 or 9 that they're going to, and those 4 are about 90 minutes each. And the thought is they can dive deeper and stay longer on fewer subjects. Now you can see this is an obvious advantage if your child wants to delve on a subject longer. And kids that are special needs, they come in many different forms. Some of them like less and to stay on it longer, and others, there's no way they can stay that long on a subject. They need to switch focus. So I want you to see how these schedules or the subjects can be scheduled. Now, one thing about the block scheduling that I want you to understand is that when they do this at high school, they do get credit at the end of the year for these classes, even though there are 4, because then the next term they'll study, the thought is, 4 different subjects. Okay, so now you can obviously see here there's some drawbacks. If you're covering one subject, does the child need that again for the next semester in order to be able to remember it? Or will it just, is it okay to just cover it for those 4 classes for the 90 minutes each and then just be done with them? You can obviously see that you will have to make the decision for what is best for your child. Now, one thing is that, remember again, this is for older kids, block scheduling, but this could work for younger ones if you're working on less subjects. For example, say one year you didn't get a lot of history in. So you can say, all right, we're a little bit behind on that. So I'm going to have less subjects this year. We're going to focus on history, or I didn't get as much science in, or I didn't get as much art in, or foreign language. So I just want you to understand what block scheduling is. Now, looping is something completely different. What that means is that you're alternating subjects, and they're mostly the content ones, and you just do the next one on your loop when you have the opening in your day. So some people schedule loops that are scheduled. Others who are more routine persons who just have a list of what's to be done for the day, they can say, okay, this is what's on our loop next. This is the subject. And so there's an example here of one loop. And so the idea is you do history, science, music, art, whatever the next available time is, and then you loop back around to history. Then you just do them in a loop, in a circle. Now, you can see here immediately a downside to this could be that you have to do a lot more planning each week or the day before. Or you could have less on your loop, like just 2 subjects, so that it's more predictable about what you have to plan. I like having, me personally, I like knowing on this day I'm going to be doing science when my schedule is predictable, because then I have several days ahead that I can plan for the science and be sure I have all the activities in the house for it. So that could be a downside. It could be an upside if your life is just unpredictable, but you need to get these subjects in, so you loop the content subjects. I would not loop skill subjects, okay? And especially for a young child. In other words, you do not want to loop like spelling, writing, math, or even really block some of those. Now, at the higher grades, you can block them, like Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, and then they're done and they move on to the next one if they're different topics. But you are going to know your child the best. You'll know what is best for them. But as a general rule of thumb, you don't want to loop skill subjects. That is something that they need to do when you do your school, whether it's every day, 3 times a week, 4 times a week. Those skill subjects need to be done consistently. But you can see here, you can block some of them for an older child, and then you can loop your content subjects. And then here I also have just choose yours. You can choose blocks of time. You can block scheduling for some subjects. You can loop some. You can assign subjects to other days, but you see you have the flexibility here how to do it. Okay, let's move on then to this next part that I want to talk about, which is plan your year. We planned the curriculum. We looked at the schedule. We're familiar now with looping and blocking. Now, what do I mean by plan your year? And for a long time, I have been sharing this year-round schedule. The first time that I was brave to put it on my site was about 2010. I put one up, and you can see here it was the most basic. My goal was to school 199 days. As if 180 wasn't good enough, I planned 199. I did that just to give me wiggle room. And then right here, I also had planned for 40 weeks of school instead of the 36. But you see, I went through and I highlighted weeks that we wanted to school. Here was 4 weeks, and I have the 20 days. This schedule has been free on my site, Tina's Dynamic Homeschool Plus, for years, and helping you to get organized. Okay, so it started from here, and then it morphed into this. Here's the schedule I have, the days, the weeks, and then this key at the bottom, I've made it bigger here for you to see that I put these times so that you could put a symbol in of when the first day of your school is and when is the last day. And why? Why do you want to choose a start date and end date? Because I know sometimes I will see this on a lot of forums. I will see when I ask, when did you start school? We don't have a start and end. We just go year round. Well, homeschool is like that. We're learning constantly. But I encourage you to have a start and end date because you have to know what you've accomplished. Your children have to know, are we at the end of this? Are we done yet? It really is good to be able to celebrate beginnings and endings. You want to be able to celebrate them. Also, this goes back to what I was telling you about when I hear people say, well, I don't think we're doing enough. Well, are you tracking? Are you measuring? We can't measure progress unless we track progress. So put the first day of school, put the end so you'll know when your year ends. It doesn't have to begin in September or August and end in May or June. For many years, I went January to December. That was good for me. I tracked by the physical year. But do have a beginning and an end. And then look at my other tips here too. Ease into your new week. I started many times Wednesday or Thursday. Doesn't public school do that? So then there's a break on the weekend, and that kind of covers your first week of school. You can absolutely use that tip. And then look here at my second tip. And for all that is sanity saving, do not do all the subjects on the first day or even first week of school. There's no sense to do that, to be overwhelming. It takes a lot of time and energy to pick up steam, get it off of the ground, and get everything flying. So you want to be able to be sure that this is the right pace for your children, the right pace for you. And especially if you have a lot of new curriculum that year, it takes a lot of time to read it, get familiar with how it's laid out. So start math and maybe one of your language arts, or math, one language arts, and something in the afternoon. And then slowly fold all of them into your day. Then remember, whatever you do to track your lesson plans, whatever method you have chosen, whether it's written or digital, track your progress. So now, are you ready to see some samples of some schedules? Like I said, I wasn't so brave on sharing my first. I had started in about 2000, really putting my schedule together. In about 2004, I started binding it, but it wasn't until closer to 2009, after I used it a few years, that I really started sharing it with some of my followers. So it was kind of wonky in the beginning, but I want to share with you how your beginning doesn't have to be wonky. So let's start and look at this first schedule, Schedule A. Okay, and I went ahead and typed it out so that you could see it and understand what was going on. You notice here, just because I put the AM, it doesn't even have to be AM for you. This could just be the afternoon. If you start in the noontime, I'm just using this as a general rule of thumb to help you plan and organize your day, to kind of see it in zones. I've got 1, 2, 3 zones here. I don't even have the evening zone in here. But you notice this is the schedule that I was telling you that I followed in the beginning when my kids were younger. I had 3 days here of just until noontime. Now, I was a young mom. It didn't take that long to teach them. They were all young. I could get everyone together and we could get out in the afternoon and run some errands. But you see that I also had all week long to plan whether it was going to be science or history for that day. And all one day I did my science, all one day I did my history. And you notice here I put science, and then I could get to history afterwards. And if I didn't get to history, history was the first the next day, and then came science. But you see how it allowed me room in the afternoon to take care of things that I needed to. I could work, maybe a house, and I did have to work when they were younger, but I was able to do the work for our business. I was able to choose that, so I chose it in the afternoon. Remember, I explained again, that wasn't my ideal time to shine, but I didn't do what I wanted to first, right? That was best for me, to get up in the morning and start on the business. It didn't really need to be started right in the morning. I would have preferred that, but my kids needed first. That's when they're the freshest. So I saved the afternoon time for me working on my business. But then you see here, I have a plan for each kid. And then in another PowerPoint, I'm going to be showing you those boxes and what I did. But I just wanted to show you this Schedule A. Again, 3 days here, but done by noon. This works when your kids are all young. And then I had 2 days that I did the content subject zone. All right, let's move to Schedule B. Okay, basically 3 days as well, but look right here. I added a loop. Here's an example of a loop right now. 2 of my days are looped. So here's one loop: geography, history, science, art. I added 2 more subjects here that I wanted to cover. If I finished art, I loop back around to geography. That allows for more content subjects. And we did a loop here before lunch, and we did a loop in the afternoon. Okay, so it's very flexible. If we had to finish by noon, I didn't have to do this loop. I could just pick up. If we did geography and we didn't get to history, that's okay. When we did Friday, I would just pick up with history. But if we could keep going, I would do history here, and then science would go here in the morning. Here in the morning before the afternoon. The key to a loop is not to have so many subjects on it that you can't make it back around. But it's very flexible, and you notice these also are the content subjects that I have looped, not the skill subjects. I even have us doing a little bit of skill subjects every day, because writing and math are so important when your kids are younger and you're trying to teach the skill subjects. But this also works for an older child as well. But you see, you have the flexibility to work, rest, catch up on housework, do other things that you need to do in the afternoon. This doesn't just work for younger kids. It could work for an older child as well. I would leave off these 2 things here for an older child and then just let them loop on the content subjects. That's also a good alternative, especially if they're high school. Them doing math a couple days not doing math a couple of days is not really going to set them back too much, unless you know that they pretty well need help in those subjects. Then maintain them. But look what I did. I cut them back to half a math lesson. Okay, so if you have one, and I did have one that was really bad at math, so that's why I had to cut it back to half. He had to do a little bit of something for the day, otherwise he'd lose it. But then you could also compromise and say, okay, on Friday, we don't do any math, and then let them in the loop, the content subjects that are looped. Okay? That's Schedule B. All right, let's move on to Schedule C. Here's another one that I did for 4 days a week. But I assigned the subjects. My kids were a little bit older. I was kind of past teaching them the writing and the reading. And we were able to start at predictable times. And I needed off a day. So you could do it right here. I have Friday shaded out for you, but this could easily move to Monday. You know, remember I told you I took Monday. They really didn't care if it was Friday or Monday. But for me, I wanted the slow start to the week. Here you may want to block this out. But then here I also, like I said, had the subjects that I wanted to be sure we covered. They were older. We could do the schedule better. No one was dictating the schedule except myself, and I could help them to maintain this type of schedule. So all the subjects are listed that we're going to get to for the afternoon. Okay, look at this one, this Schedule D. This is more like a routine. This is what I was talking about when a mom really doesn't have any control over her schedule, but what can she do? So what she's done is she said, the morning, this is what we're going to do. It might be time with the hubs. I know I had a friend, her husband worked retail. He didn't get home till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. They visited with dad. They didn't go to bed till more like closer to 12 or 1. And he didn't go to work until late that next day. So they had a slow start. By the time she cleaned and got breakfast, lunch, then they started in the afternoon. But remember my key, whenever you start, always with the skill subjects first, the freshest. Get those done first. And then here's a loop. Here's one loop right here. She chose either history or science for this loop. And then she worked some in the evening because dad was home later. This also worked for me one year too, because my husband worked 12 hours a day from 7 to 7. And so he would come home actually at lunchtime. So we would do math here, then we'd have a long time off, or he would work on one of the loop subjects independently, do some computer work, do some independent reading, because I prepared a big lunch. Our supper was a big lunch. And then it was just salad or something in the evening or a half a sandwich because he got home so late. So we worked another loop in here, but you see the second loop I had, we chose from these two subjects. One loop here, one loop there. Okay, I've shared those 4 schedules with you. Let me show you this one. I didn't want to show you mine first. This is my teacher view of all of my kids who I'm supposed to be working with and the subjects that we're supposed to be doing, because I had to see all of them on one page for myself. This is each of their schedules that I prepared with the time, how long for the classes, and the day or the hour that they're supposed to be working on it, with the days of the weeks here and their subjects. I had snacks, chores, lunch. This is obviously when they're older, I was able to predict it, and I was trying to train them to good habits and a good routine. And like I said, I had more control over it. But also, you see, I had to make me a teacher view so I would know which set of kids I was working with when. So also I did that. How many minutes I was supposed to be with them. This was the schedule. These were the days of the week. And then each kid's name and what subjects we were working on. So you can schedule hourly when you need it. You can absolutely do that. This is Schedule E. So there's so many varieties, so many things you can do. Sometimes we don't have control, and in order to have control, then we'll do something like this routine, because this still is organized. This is very organized. You have a direction, you have a plan. You're not just shooting willy-nilly, but it's more flexible. Or if you need a schedule like C, you can be as scheduled as you need to with the hourly one. So just remember, here is our planning timeline. You have the realistic view now that your schedule emerged. You understand the math, because I love the details. I want you to have flexibility. You don't have to start planning in terms like weeks, like quarters or 6-week terms or semesters. 180 days is fine to get you going. But do look at the frequency of your curriculum. How many times is it suggesting that you study it, and how many weeks do you have? How many lesson planning days are there? Like I said, some include 140. You could have a lot of wiggle room in there if you're doing 180. Understand some of the loop and the block are just assigning certain subjects. You don't have to get caught away with what public school is doing, but we understand that by the block scheduling that they have less subjects diving deeper, and as a rule of thumb, it usually works for a middle school or a high school kid. And then they can move on to the other set of subjects that they're not doing and get credit for the whole year. It keeps them from feeling overwhelmed. We also want to schedule by the year. We want to mark off vacations, holidays. I even marked off teacher and service days when I needed them. I just pulled a halt to school, just like public school does, and I said, okay, y'all are off today, and I lesson planned. I had a teacher and service day. So take my year schedule that I have, and I do that yearly on my website, and plan how many weeks, when's the start, when is the end, so you will actually know we got to the end, or this is how far we got in our curriculum. And then my tip, fold in subjects gradually, start midweek or a Thursday so you have a weekend, have some time off. And for all that's good and dear, track those lesson plans and determine a system. Okay, I have another one coming up about how to organize a school area, and then some record keeping for those that have kids that are older, and for those states that require a little bit more stringent record keeping.